Right. A very good afternoon. And first and foremost, I would like to thank everybody for taking your time out and joining this particular panel discussion. So what we'll be talking about today is the application security in the payment world. How different is this? First and foremost, let me quickly introduce CISA. CISA, we are a forensics-driven cybersecurity company trusted by organizations across the globe for securing businesses with robust preventive, detective, and corrective actions with our services and solutions. We are one of the global PCI forensic investigators who basically authorized to carry forensic investigations across the world. We've got 1,000+ engagements every year and 2,000+ customers. About Wibmo. Wibmo is a global paytech company and industry leaders in the payment security and the digital payment space in emerging markets with 130+ banks as customers in 34 countries. So Wibmo, they've got about 3 billion transactions authenticated annually, 23+ million mobile payment users, 5 million virtual and 3 million plastic cards, and so on and so forth. Also, they were the first to implement 3D Secure, which is version 2.0 in India with Federal Bank, and first introduced one-click authentication in India. Quick introduction about myself. So I'm Prajwal, and I work as a principal consultant here in CISA. I've been working with CISA for about a decade here, and I head the entire payment security space. I'm the moderator for your particular session. I'm also going to be a part of the particular CPSI program, which is our flagship program where we do trainings for people across the world. And I'm early trainer for the same as well. Introducing to you today the panelists, which is Mr. Dharshan Shanthamurthy. Dharshan is the founder and CEO at CISA. Dharshan has about more than 2 decades of experience. He is mission to protect businesses from cyber criminals. And he works closely with CXOs of security posting. Next is Pravin Kumar. Pravin is the CISO of Wibmo, a PayU company. Pravin has spent most of his career in technology, audit, DevSecOps, GRC, cyber data, governance, and privacy. His expertise include developing, implementing, maintaining, and overseeing enforcement of information security policies, procedures, and standards based on industry standard best practices. And to name a few certifications, Pravin has acquired certifications like CISSP, TOGAF, PMP, CISA, and many more. So I would like to welcome Dharshan and Pravin to this particular panel discussion. Before we start this particular panel discussion, I would just like to ask a quick question, right? Because the payment world is evolving. So I'd like to throw this particular thing in your mind, and we can take this particular feedback probably at the end or during the question and answers. I just want to understand, payments are eating the world today. Yes or no? So you can keep your comments and let me know later because this is something which is a thought. Because most of us might agree to it, but I know 90% might deny. So I'm open to this later. So having said that, just going to give a quick brief into how the payment industry per se has evolved over a period of time, right? So according to the McKinsey Global Payment Report, which was published in 2021, we see that by 2025, the revenue of the payment ecosystem per se is going to be around $2.5 trillion. And this is huge. So if you look into the payment evolution from 2010, just taking about a decade back, you see it basically started off with smartphones, to the internet, the platforms, the wallets, and now we talk about cryptocurrencies, stable coins, we talk about CBDC, we talk about connected cars, IoT, and so on and so forth. And last but not the least is BaaS, which is banking as a service. The number of non-cash transactions, they grew by about 6%. And if you look into the entire payment ecosystem per se, Asia Pacific alone, it continues to lead the way in real-time payments. And India registered 25.6 billion transactions in this particular field. Also, 91% of users in the entire world will have smartphones by end of 2026. Introduction of 5G coupled with advances in artificial intelligence and quantum computing, blockchain, this is rapidly growing. But the pain point today or the problem today is 1 in 4 consumers are uninformed about cybersecurity. That is the pain point. And now, according to the JP Morgan, summary of the report, which they basically launched, they come up with the conclusion, which is called as power. right, which talks about platform, online, wallets, embed, and real time. So the payments and value-added services are on a trajectory of tremendous evolution across these 5 pools. So basically, which is your platform, which is online, wallet, embed, and real time. So this is in a nutshell about the payment space and how payment has evolved over a period of time. So having said this, I will quickly jump into the panel discussion right now, where I have a couple of questions, and I'll be asking Dharshan and as well as Pravin. So we would like to keep this as interactive as possible. So anybody on the particular forum, if any of you have your particular questions, you can use the chat window, you can throw questions, and we'll be more than happy to take them. So my first question is to Dharshan. Dharshan, so being the CEO of CISA, and obviously our top 5 investigations, which is basically a report which has come into the picture, and we've just released the top 5 learnings as well. And being one of the global forensic investigators, and also in the top 5 report, we see that application security is one of the main reasons why organizations are basically being compromised and so on and so forth. How important do you think is application security in the payment security space per se?
See, I mean, our forensic reports, any forensic investigation actually has 3 parts, 3 parts to it. First is the ingress, second is lateral movement, and third is egress. And of course, you could go the Lockheed Martin kill chain and elaborate that further. But largely these 3 parts to a compromise. And one of the key things, as you rightly mentioned, Prajwal, in our report, is the ingress. Literally has been one of the key things that we have found is ingress. Largely, there have been two major causes for ingress to happen, and one of them is application security weaknesses. And that's something that we have seen time and again, and that has also been reiterated in our report this year, is that apart from the spear phishing, which is one other way of ingress into an organization, the other major ingress is web application security or those kinds of compromises. So from a security standpoint, from a forensic standpoint, that's what we've been seeing. So that is one. The second, of course, is is in terms of the action and objectives, which is to exploit the crown jewels which store such sensitive information. And that's once again the second places where applications obviously contain a lot of those sensitive information and leads to a lot of compromise. Now that's so one of the key that's one just to answer your question. But on the topic of why application security and how different is it in the payments world, just to give my thoughts about it, is that especially in the payments world, the difference is the type and the data, and of course the business logic of how payments are actually processed. You spoke about a whole lot of new form factors of payments, and these form factors of payments have different business logic in the application, which is also one of the ways in which are being subjected to attacks. We spoke about, I'm not sure whether you covered about DeFi, but one of the key things that we have seen in DeFi or decentralized finance is a huge amount of data breaches have started being reflected because of compromising of, the business logic flaws in the way multiple, decentralized exchanges and so on and so forth come through. So overarching, I think this is an extremely important topic that we are discussing today, and looking forward to actively interacting and learning a little from Pravin as well. So over to you, Prajwal. Thank you.
Thanks, Dharshan. Fantastic. So yeah, Pravin, your thoughts on the same?
Yeah, I think hi. So first of all, good afternoon for our Indian audience, and good evening for our APAC region audience, and of course, good morning for other part of the world. Yes, I think Dharshan has covered. We should be very sensitive, especially if you are CISO or security or risk manager for payment industry. Especially, I'm addressing to those set of guys. right? You are dealing with the sensitive data. You are dealing with the credit card data. You are dealing with the payment data, right? You have the one layer of additional, responsibility to manage your data, right? That's why this is the major difference, that this application security comes with bigger baggage or heavier baggage than the other industry related applications, right? So you have to be very, very careful, sensitive to understand your business, to understand your data, and then accordingly plan your control environment for all your application. So for example, like we in Wibmo, right, we are into the product kind of marketing, or we sell the product services to our customers, and like most of the customers are bank, and that's why dealing with the banking customer, you come with the complex or very heavy dose of compliance regulation. So this also one of the differentiation as compared to the other industry application. So compliance dose is very heavy for payment related application. This is the first. Second, that as I said, that data, nature of data, we deal with PII, you deal with credit card number, payment transaction, you have the bigger responsibility. And the third is also the lots of API, lots of integration we do, right? You should know your footprint, you should know your threat surface, and you have to have the complete threat surface landscape in your mind while designing this control. These three together, makes bit different from other applications related security control environment. But fundamental again remains same, Prajwal. So application security, take any framework with COVID, with NIST, any framework, right? Fundamental remains same. That yes, all the basic building block have to be there, right? Apart from this fundamental, these are the additional control you need to keep in your mind. So this is my short answer, Prajwal.
Great.
Yeah, just to add to that, Prajwal, just to expand on what Pravin just mentioned, rightfully, I think he rightly covered the data, which is sensitive, and the second is compliance. And to this, I would just want to add that there is, from being a forensics-driven cybersecurity and having a lot of forensic footprint, one of the key things that we've also seeing is it also adds a different motivation to the fraudster. The motivation is a lot higher. So obviously the barricades have to be taller. So just wanted to add that the other dimension to this is, since it's so sensitive, it's obviously more precious for anyone who wants to break into it.
Absolutely. So yeah, Darshan, I also would like to add another point into this, right? Because, we've been doing these particular forensic investigations for over a decade now. And what we see is it's not just the critical applications which are getting compromised. We know people, like, for example, if you take a banking environment, right? We know about a card management system. We know about applications which are basically critical. So people tend to protect that. But what they basically miss is their day-to-day operating, like the mundane applications, like your ticketing, your HRMS tools, and so on and so forth, where they miss, from a security aspect of that. And that is where it comes in as an ingress point for people to basically go ahead and, exploit systems. So I think what is important, my two stands is it's not just the critical applications, but we'll have to look into the applications holistically and ensure that, all of this particular applications is secure.
So for me, Prajwal, how I practice, I don't differentiate, that this is my critical set of application, this is my lesser. I don't discriminate, right? For me, control is overarching. For me, everything is equal. All controls are equal. Of course, you have to pay more attention to few critical application. But the basic, as I said, that your standard has to be covering every set of your application infra component, everything. That there should not be any compromise on that. Yeah, on that, top of that, whatever the additional compliance requirement, whatever the industry requirement you have to put on that. But do not differentiate. This is my, one of the takeaway I can share with my audience, that do not discriminate with your set of application or infrastructure.
Right. And Pravin, just to add to that, you're bang on. In fact, I know you've not read our top 5 report, but one of the key things that we have included, one of the key things that we are also recommending as part of our learnings is to, make sure that you are first identify, data across your perimeter, across your entire organization, and then also have all your controls in place, especially like monitoring, not just to your critical assets, but across board, because ingress can happen from any side. So agree with your thought process there.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is what we also preach, actually, Pravin, just to give you a heads up that, we have to have one particular baseline followed across everything and not differentiate, so that, at the end of the day, holistically, we protect the environment, right? So that's my take as well. Great. So Pravin, next question is to you, right? Because, we are more from a cybersecurity firm, and being forensics driven, we've spoken about that piece. Now, what I would like to ask you is in terms of the fintech space, right? Because you guys are one of the largest players in the fintech space. And, obviously fintech is basically booming over a period of time. So what are your, if we basically have to talk about top three, from a security standpoint, if you have to basically talk about top three controls, I know you spoke about it, but from a fintech standpoint, what would you basically talk about?
So I say this is a loaded question, Prajwal, but I'll again come to the topic on the application security. So let me answer the top three concerns for me as a CISO, as a practitioner, for limited to the application security, domain. So top three for me, definitely, that knowing your footprint. This is the major concern for any CISO, and I also struggled when I joined, PU group of companies. That what are your APIs, right? Do you have inventory of your API? Do you have inventory of all your infra related or supporting to those applications? Do you know that who are accessing, from where it is accessing? So knowing contextual awareness about your set of application is the major concern for me. It took a while for me to get into the complete footprint on threat surface, what we call technically. Second is that identifying and hiring a real talent on who knows the application security. And again, you will not find anywhere, but this is my biggest struggle, right? I'm still struggling to find the talent, right? You'll get a lot of cyber security professionals, CISSP, and all those certifications, but there are very few talents available in market who knows the application, who knows the coding as well, who knows the threat as well, who understand the mitigation step as well, who understand the DevOps as well, DevSecOps. Very few talent. There is talent war. So that is again my second concern. I would encourage all our audience to if you really want to go into deeper in cybersecurity, go to higher level, please develop your knowledge around the application security or API security. This is the future, guys. So DevSecOps, CI/CD automation, and all those things. Please invest some time. The third is that, right, so far we have been into the complete on-prem shop, right? And I'm specifically talking about Wibmo. I'm not giving the very generic information. Once you move from on-prem to cloud environment, which I initiated a few months back, that we have the roadmap to move from on-prem to cloud. Then you have to prepare many things. So moving to the cloud, and this is again the industry pattern, and based on my discussion with a number of CISOs and service professional, right? The company is eager to move to the cloud, and then they face the music, right? So please plan and create all the cloud security risk related inventory, and see that where you fall in terms of your residual risk, right? So this is the third biggest concern: cloud application security risk, right? Be it identity and access management, be it anything, right? I'll talk more on that cloud application security risk. But be careful while moving to cloud. Getting into cloud is always easier, but sustaining there, maintaining there, it is tough. So for me, these are the three biggest risks. This is very specific to fintech domain, Prajwal. But high level, and if I say that, there is always, supply chain risk we have, like Log4j. We also have, many other kind of risks that the attacker or malicious actors are, hooking into your OWASP-related vulnerabilities, and people do not care of the OWASP-related vulnerabilities, which is again a real risk for any application security professional. So this is where I'll stop, Prajwal. If you have any follow-up question, happy to answer.
Great. Thank you, Pravin. I think this was basically a really good, from a fintech standpoint, and how application security is important, and top three concerns from a CISO standpoint. So Dharshan, the question is, in terms of, I was just about to talk to Pravin as well, because he brought up cloud coming into the picture, right? So I want to know, because Nowadays, because of the pandemic, obviously, people have started moving their critical applications and so on and so forth into the cloud. A lot of people have started deploying their particular systems, applications, and so on and so forth onto the cloud. So from a cloud standpoint, if you have to talk about, the security, top 3 security from a cloud standpoint, what are your takes on that, buddy?
Right. So, let me answer it in this way. So one is general workloads moving to the cloud. And the second, what are the key things that we need to keep in mind when the workloads, when the payment workloads are moving into the cloud? Some of which has commonality, some of which can be slightly more, has to be seen from a different set of lens, right? So first is workloads moving into the cloud. There are a couple of ways that most organizations do. One is lift and shift. You take a on-premise application and you do a lift and shift, and then that's really not really leveraging cloud. But over a period of time, that's at least the first movement that typically happens when people adopt cloud. And then, of course, then they, over a period of time, over a couple of years, they move to a cloud native, unless until there are organizations which have gone in the cloud, which is different of this. And they start using, cloud native technologies and being cloud native, which means that they are really leveraging technology. They're completely harnessing the power of cloud, right? So it brings in a whole lot of dimension, and we can do a separate session around that. But staying with the topic, how is it different in the payments world? So in the payment world, double clicking on what Pravin just brought out when we started off, 2 major things. One is sensitivity of data, and second is compliance. So one, obviously, when you're moving payment workloads to the cloud, you end up using, when you're actually, I'm talking about cloud native technology, you're using standard or cloud provided SDKs. And obviously today, we use a lot of open source. We consume a lot of open source, pieces of code. So one of the other things that is happening in fintech because of the go-to-market and the business, and let's face it, right? We are all security guys, but we can talk to death about it. But the fact is that business, we are all here to serve the business, and business today in the fintech world is about speed and agility and go-to-market, user convenience, customer experience, so on and so forth. So security is obviously, we are all trying to catch up and trying to keep pace at which they are trying to go to market. And so obviously they are making multiple releases. So, from the payments world, we kind of get a double whammy there. So one is generally as a technology moving to cloud itself is, we are supposed to catch up with. Second is in the payments world, you're talking about sensitive data, and tomorrow if something goes wrong from a compliance angle, then you're held accountable for it. So my thing is, the top concerns, which I, as a security professional, especially in the payments world, would be very concerned about is how am I dealing with sensitive data in the cloud, right? And how is that being dealt with it from a developer standpoint, from a release standpoint, from a DevSecOps standpoint? There are a whole lot of other dimensions that comes in. How is my, let's face it, today the security testing has to happen by the developers, not by a QA, because by the time they come out and they wait for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, the code has already been released. And if there is a flaw in that code, someone would have built something on top of that code and made a release. So, and the time to rectify that will be a couple of months. And by then the code is exposed and, a whole lot of other things comes into the picture. So first is, how do you get that, just to put that construct, how do you get that sensitivity of information handled and tested, that Pravin spoke about it rightly from a developer standpoint, how do you get that addressed at that point in time? Obviously with automation and whole sorts of things. The second is on the compliance piece. That's the big thing, because tomorrow, you can be audited, you have to provide documentation. There are a whole lot of compliances, including our, payment, our regulatory required frameworks, our PCI frameworks, so on and so forth, which say how you need to be handling with sensitive data, encryption, not encryption, a whole lot of, and then of course with data anonymization guidelines, which might come in. So what is that we need to do? That's the other section that we need to get handled. So my, I'll just reduce it from top 2 concerns, which will be from, how do I handle sensitive data? in the cloud environment, and how do I manage compliance in the cloud environment on a continuous basis. And remember that you are talking about containers, you're talking about, and also the other complexity which gets added is today there is also a lesser demarcation between application security and infrastructure as a code. Because say for example, you're using Lambda functions for development, then so someone who's doing that should also be aware that they're consuming some infrastructure as a code within the application security, and know security as your SAST tool can actually help you scan those kinds of things. So so basically, and believe me, we're still emerging here. We're still learning how this entire thing happens. So we are a couple of years behind to catch up. So I'm definitely concerned, and I think we need to pay a lot of attention, especially in the payments world, because we are dealing with higher sensitive data and compliance, and and we need to be careful about that.
Fantastic. I think, Dharshan, you've covered, most of it, and this is what I was also looking for. Pravin, you want to add anything from a cloud perspective, because you guys have moved to the cloud, like you rightly mentioned. So anything that you would want to highlight?
So no, next 30 or 60 seconds, let me summarize my cloud journey, and I think most of our audience can relate, right? So I'm just sharing my experience, right? As I said, till 2020-21, we were completely on-prem shop. And as Dharshan rightly said, there has been always business pressure on the agility side or go-to-market side, right? And we were struggling, right? It takes typically 10 to 12 weeks for, procurement or for hardware, etc. So we did not have much option but to move cloud because of not only agility or because of the other advantage what we get, and we will not get into what are the advantage. I'm sure we all know, right, and the cloud advantage. But I always caution that whenever you trying to move to the cloud, first you get some basics right, which is important, right? Do you have the cloud aware employee or staff or your employee in IT or in production management side or in development side? If you don't have, first get those talents in place. This is important, right? Real talent. Second is that, do you have the cloud security framework, cloud security related standard? How much you have socialized? Okay, first you create your own based on your contextual requirement. You please create your customized cloud security standard. Be it AWS, be it Azure, GCP, doesn't matter. It should be the cloud agnostic. Create the standard first, and then go to the vendor. This is my cloud security framework. This is how I would like to implement my security control. This is my outline in terms of compliance, in terms of my specific requirement. Do you have all those offering to help me to implement from the first step? This will be the first discussion with any vendor. It is important, so that vendor will come to know that okay, this customer is a bit different, and they are more on the security compliance requirement and security by design or privacy by design kind of concept, and they will take care, right? These people are very smart vendor. Then only you can start moving to anything to the cloud. And again, cloud standard will cover the basic tool as well. You should invest tool before even you moving your payload to the cloud, right? That simple tool like CISSP, Cloud Access Security Broker, it is very vendor must have, right? Simple tool like AWS offer lots of security tool, right? You must have, right? Be it Observer, be it any AWS or Azure offering, you must procure all those, right? Layer 3 security solution or layer 7 security, DDoS security solution. These are the must have. People go directly and then they really suffer on the DDoS attack, right? So it is costlier, but you have to invest in that. Then only you start moving to that. That also quick gradual. There's no big bang unless you are the very mature organization. You have the real talent pool. So go slowly, gradually, and develop the culture accordingly. So this is the tip I can share with all my security professional or cloud security professional on this.
Fantastic. I think that's good stuff as well, because, we've seen, like Darshan was rightly mentioning, based on our particular investigations and being global forensic investigators, it's, even though we've got top-notch technologies, we still see, these particular environments being compromised. So it's not about just having top-notch technology, but you need to have the expertise in order to basically go ahead and make sure that, you configure these tools in the right manner, and then you use it accordingly. So the skill also is basically required, which is very important.
Yes.
So moving on to the next question, we all spoke about application testing. We spoke about dynamic, we spoke about static, and also Darshan rightly mentioned it's not about testing, which is basically has to be done by a tester per se, but the developer himself. Where we have this piece called the interactive testing as well, which is coming to the picture of late, right? So I just want to understand, Darshan, from your particular perspective, is there anything specific like a static or a dynamic or an interactive, or you'd suggest that we use, a combination of all the three? What are your thoughts on from a testing standpoint, application testing?
Yeah. So, see, now, this is a great thing that it was, which earlier it was about shift left, right? So, like the way you, I shared that earlier as well. We were talking about this as well. So now the concept of shift everywhere. So from shift left it becomes shift everywhere, or you need to do it. So one is the basic, but the concept, the concepts remain the same, right? So it has to start from the design standpoint, right? So if you get it wrong from the design, then obviously you got it wrong in the implementation as well. Now coming back to the application, yes. So you definitely need to have these kinds of automated tools. Now, at what points in times, right? So before you check out your code or before its deployment, and obviously the earlier the better. The second, but the real challenge today, what we are facing is bulk of these tools take a hell lot of time to scan, right? And to throw a lot of things. But then you actually, the developers are in great pressure to release. And so they make releases, they may check out the codes, and then that problem fundamentally is there. And the best tool today, some of those tools which are there, apparently are only the earliest cycle by which you can close all those vulnerabilities is about 3 months from the time you do it, because you have so much of interdependencies, and that can span more. And the best of the organizations are able to do it less than a month. Organizations which are getting familiar with this are taking up to a year to close this. So that's the overarching thing. So depending on, what's the use case, right? So for example, some of these tools that you're talking about may not even really work when you use infrastructure as a code, or you're consuming an SDK, which is provided by a cloud provider. For example, if you want to connect to an S3 bucket, and you're using a standard Java SDK, which is provided by, say, AWS. Now, how can you run a tool on that? Because so I think it needs it is the truth of the matter is it's a lot complicated. And my thing is you can't have a one size fits all solution for anything. And I don't want to just say, okay, you go in for this kind of a tool, but I think you need to be conscious of the fact as to how you are doing your development, what application you are developing. And the construct of this conversation is, okay, when you're developing something in the payments world, why you need to be more cautious. I think by and large, at the end of this session, if the people on this call are able to take that message out, that be sensitive if it is a payment application, one from a sensitive, from the data standpoint, how you process, store, transmit, because say for example, you're talking about taking this data and handling it in the memory of the cloud provider, right? How do you make sure that you burn that data after it is getting processed, right? And you have compliance requirements which says that you need to destroy those functions and variables from the application, and that was a lot easier when it was on premise. Now, so, and second is, of course, from the compliance angle, how do you demonstrate that? So I think, so the point here is just don't take it from a tool standpoint, take it from a holistic, how do you make sure that you take care of your application security on a holistic basis, from a design, from a cloud provider, to the tool sets that you're using, to the customers that you are rendering, whether it's in India or global, because there are central bank regulatory requirements that comes into picture. Each central bank has its own side of complexities that comes in. So be conscious of all that, and then have a strategy to address that. So what I would require, my 2 cents is to have a proper documented strategy to address your payment, application security in the payments world, which might be specific to your own organization.
So Prajwal, if I may add what Darshan said, right? Specific to the IST, right? So definitely it is required. Traditionally, people are limited with SAST and DST. Hopefully, our audience knows what is SAST. SAST means static scan, DST means dynamic scan. So how typically DevSecOps, what Darshan said, or CI/CD pipeline automation, what we implemented in our environment. I'll just speak again real life example. So any product are being conceptualized, right? So it start with the for security perspective, and as per my security standard, application security standard, it starts with kind of the application threat modeling, right? So in that conceptual or design stage itself, what are the threat actors? What will be accessing? Is it web-facing application? Is it internal-facing application? What kind of data was accessed? So those are the very fundamental to understand. Then we created a security and privacy by design, right? So that developer or the project lead or product lead has to complete that, right? Then it goes to the development, and there are lots of as part of our DevSecOps like SCA, software composition analysis, or SST. Before the committing the code, that code get scanned. Then during deployment, we run the DST, and then IST we keep running, right? Interactive, it's based on the requirement, based on the particular event or particular usage, right? We do the IST. This is a continuous process. In that way, that what Darshan has said, the industry challenge that it takes minimum 3 months. In that way, trust me, from 3 months, you can cut to the few days. This is what we achieved within our organization. So if you are really, true sense, if you have implemented DevSecOps or CI/CD automation, you can cut this remediation timeline, at least going forward. Legacy problem will still there, and there will be struggle. But going forward, all the new piece of code, you can minimize the number of vulnerability. You can also minimize the remediation cycle. This is my 2 cents, in addition to what Darshan is doing.
I think great, Pravin. I think you also covered that particular piece, right? Because like Darshan also rightly mentioned, you can't have one particular tool which fits as a solution for everything, right? That's not going to be possible. So it's, you have to basically use a combination of all of this. And like you rightly mentioned, DevSecOps and CI/CD pipeline, which is very important, from an application security holistically, right? So in the interest of time, I have, another question, basically in the payment security space, because, we being global forensic investigators and also being associated with the PCI Council since inception back in 2006. I mean, for people who are there on this particular forum, there's something called as a payment application data security standard, which was getting transitioned to something called as the software security framework, right? Which is SSF, which is primarily the combination of S3 and SSLC. And Pravin, I can already see the smile on your face because, Wibmo being one of the largest fintech players, I think from a vendor standpoint, you guys were the first company in the entire Asia who got listed on the PCI portal for the secure SLC standard, which basically gives you that confidence that, from an application development standpoint, you're following the SDLC approach, and, the entire application security is strong. So how has your journey been, in the SSLC, the entire compliance journey and your listing? What are your thoughts on that particular piece?
Yeah, first of all, thank you. Yes, CISA's contribution in this achieving this, it's this prestigious certification, first in Asia, probably top 10 in world as well. So thank you, Darshan and the team for helping us to get this certificate. Yes, I'm very happy. But this was not an easy journey, Prajwal. Okay, and application security and was one of my personal and major concern, being CISO, right? So I had 2 options. One is that to remediate, to force to our development team, our DevOps team, our IT team to implement all our security standards. And second way to adopt the route of certification, right? I took the other thing that, okay, if I can motivate my team and then if I can also, buy in all the stakeholders, was if you do this 4-5 things, you'll get the certificate, which is really prestigious, within the payment industry. So in that way, I'll get the certificate as well, and also I'll receive my personal agenda to mitigate those identified risks or the gaps what we had. So I took this journey, the PCI-SLC certification. Typically, how anyone can achieve, right? PCI-SLC, that your application vulnerability, you have the continuous scanning happening, and you have the practice of secure SDLC process so that where this vulnerability are mitigated, right, on the timely manner before it gets into the production, right? So this is a very small requirement from PCI-SLC side, but it is difficult to implement. Being CISO, I can vouch for this. But yeah, so we understood the requirement of this PCI-SLC requirement. Accordingly, we change our SDLC policy or our organizational framework, adopted the requirement of this particular certification, and roll out through the awareness, through the continuous training and also help from all my stakeholders. So credit goes to all my IT team, DevOps team, development team, engineering team to get this certification. And thank you, Dharshan and team, for helping me to get this certification of probably first in Asia and top 10 in the world. Prajwal.
Great. I think, Pravin, it gives us great pleasure, and actually to bring it out in this particular forum, this is great. So, Dharshan, just a quick question around the same thing. Like I rightly mentioned, that we've been associated with the council since inception, and we've been, a part of the GARE and so on and so forth. So, what are your thoughts on this particular new standard, which is moved from PADSS to, the software security framework? Any inputs that you have for the audience?
No, I think it's a brilliant initiative. So one, I think it is to recognize the fact that so if the history is, this was I remember back in the days it was called payment application. Before it became PADSS, it was called something else, PABV or something like that, payment application best practice or something, PABP or something. And then it moved to PADSS, the Payment Application Data Security Standard. But the difference now is that this entire thing is split into two, right? So this continues to have the software side of it and the software development lifecycle part, which I think is taking cognizance of the way the industry is actually moving forward, right? Which is that you now, further to whatever we've been speaking for the last 45 minutes, is that the industry is moving towards more dynamic and agile way of releasing of development compared to what it was there earlier, right? So it kind of recognizes that fact, and that's the reason why the software lifecycle kind of a certification is what was formulated, and I think it's playing out very well, and it's a step in the right direction. And I'm congratulations to Wibmo and Pravin in this leadership to have been thoughtful about it and using this in order to improve the security posture. And I think that's a very, very smart move. We always complain as cybersecurity professionals that we are always handcuffed. But I think this is something very strategic of bringing in a certification component to improve security posture. Just that it brings in the spirit of accomplishment and stringency and discipline, most importantly, in the development. And we all know, people who have been in the development world, they need to follow what the business brutal truths are, which is go to market, customer experience, so on and so forth. So their initial inertia is to release the code at the earliest and make sure that it doesn't break. But security has always been an afterthought. But if you bring in this certification angle, at least in the back of the mind, it plays out that this might impact the certifications in the future. I think it's a step in the right direction. It's a pretty smart move.
Great. I think that's well said, Dharshan, because this particular entire cycle earlier, the payment application data security standard, it was more application specific. It was just talking about applications dealing with authorization, settlement, and so on and so forth. But this particular vertical of SSLC coming into the picture, it's more from vendor, having security incorporated in each phase, starting from requirement specification to design to testing and so on and so forth. So I think this is a great move as well. So in the interest of time, not going into depths of it, But who is interested can reach out to us and be more than happy to explain the transition and, in terms of the entire journey, in terms of not just the application, but the entire holistic approach of the SDLC. So now I think I'll basically take a pause to answer some questions out here. Just seeing if we've got any questions.
And Prajwal, just to add, I think there is a webinar which we did entirely on this as well, which I think is accessible. Probably one of us can put it out on the link there in case people want to go through what those are, or for that matter, reach out to any of us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so I have a question. So Pravin, there's a question to Pravin.
Okay.
How do you deal with customer-dependent application vulnerabilities and legal risks associated with them?
Well, yeah. So thank you for asking. This is really good question. If you are availing services right from the third-party application vendor, like mostly PayU or in Wibmo, we are the service provider for number of banks, right? So if something goes wrong in our product, right, and then definitely as part of the legal bonding or legal contract, we are also partly liable, depending on the nature of contract. But how you can minimize this risk, right? The vulnerabilities or exploit coming through the third party, product or services, right? This is also called software supply chain risk, right? Invest in TPR, third party risk management. This is also mandatory within India by the RBI and different regulators. And if you identify that few customers or few the service providers are critical service provider for you, because in most of the cases, Wibmo is always a critical service provider for most of my customers. They come and do the audit. They ask different evidence as well, so that they get assurance that yes, so the service what we are doing with this particular vendor is safe and secure, right? So this is one thing. This is called, the proactive thing, the TPRM, the third party risk management. You have to invest and get the assurance, WCO, and tell your board that, yes, this particular service provider is safe and secure to continue business with that particular provider. The second thing that if something goes wrong, and I will not get into the legal thing, then it is guided by your legal contract, right? So how you are dealing or writing or signed with that legal contract, right? In most of the cases, if you are liable to pay some penalty, then pay the penalty. That's why the legal contract plays very critical role, and you have to safeguard your the third party service provider contract in your interest, and be conscious of the legal provision or terms and conditions. This is what I would say, Prajwal.
Fantastic. I think that answers the question. Great. Thanks, Pravin. So Darshan, I think this question is apt for us. It's pretty good. This is from Anita. So she's asking us a question saying how various compliance frameworks like NIST, ISO, PCI DSS, SOC, and so on and so forth can be consolidated and made available to the industry people for any reference. Is there any initiative taken on the stem? So you probably want to say anything around that?
Yeah, I mean, so one is, I think there is a positive side to it. There's a hope side of it, and there is a reality side of it, right? The hope side of it is that all of them can be, there is definitely convergence between all of them, and then obviously we need to get to there. We need to get to that stage pretty quickly as an industry, because there's a lot of wastage that is happening because of duplication of work and audit fatigue and so on and so forth, and compliance fatigue, so on and so forth. So there is definitely, I think, we are moving towards it, and you are aware, even our one of the key things that we do in our assessments or our audits is we have our own platform called CISA Assistant, which is used to harmonize between different standards when someone works with us. So that's something that we are in a constant endeavor to reduce the workload of our customers, and in some sense they don't need to invest in a GRC tool, because they get one comprehensive view of working with an organization, and we take bulk of their headache so that they get that thing. So that's how we kind of work with organizations. Then there's a reality side to it, is that there's a context for each of these standards, and there is a cycle, there is scope changes, and so on and so forth. So that piece is something that, so I think in all, there can be a consolidation that essentially can happen, and it depends on organization to organization, scope to scope. So you definitely need to have a consolidation strategy on that, but that cannot be, and on a very tactical level, it can be just do a control mapping, and there are lots of frameworks out there which can do a control mapping between different standards. But that, I think, is not so much of a useful exercise unless until you know how to apply that to your own particular environment, and how do you benefit from that, for your own respective organization. I think that's that's something that I think each organization has to decide. But to the point, I think it's a brilliant point. I think industry is moving towards consolidation. That's where the trend is towards, and I'm hopeful that in the next couple of years, you'll see a lot of organizations doing it. And at CISA, we are trying to do that for our customers by platforming it on one thing, so that it's easy for when an organization deals with us for, say, PCI, ISO, SOC 2, they have one interface, and there's concept of reusability of evidences and so on and so forth. So that's more from a partner standpoint, but as a customer, as an organization, you need to have your own strategy as to how you need to implement it and get benefits of it.
So on the application side, Darshan, if I may add, Prajwal, for me personally, right, I got benefited a lot. This we generally call unified control framework or integrated control framework, right? In Wibmo, right, we got around 8 certification within 1 year, which probably the record for any organization in the world who got the 8 certification in a year, right? But I have used very efficiently this unified control framework. This is based on the test 1 certify many, right? But there are number of overlapping control between PCI, ISO, SOC 2, PCI SLC, PADSS, number of overlapping control. Right? We created this unified control framework, and now we know that what control or what evidence we need to get this certificate renewed or compliant, right? And we are using it very efficiently. I would suggest that CISO should know, rather must invest creating some unified and integrated control framework. You can add these, plus also you can add your legal requirement in this as well, your particular industry requirement also in this, so that it can be very comprehensive, accurate, correct, and complete. And then you can also create the control requirement. And this is also called RCM, risk control matrix. You have your risk, or you have that compliance requirement, what are the control you need, and who will be doing those controls. And you can put this in Excel sheet, control owner wise, share those control owner wise with frequency, and then you can manage it efficiently. On application side, Darshan, I am using, at least I'm maybe the exception, but I'm using very efficiently this.
Very nice. Very nice.
Great, good to know. So also, Anita, just to give you a small heads up, because I've been working in this space because compliance, NIST, ISO, PCI DSS, and all of this is like a bread and butter for me, because this is what I've been doing. Just to give you a heads up, it's not about just like Darshan rightly said, we understand there's overlapping of these particular controls, but what is important, or where I see is the pain point, is control mapping, right? It's important for us to understand the intent of the control with each of these particular requirements and the standards coming in, because it's not just that the controls are overlapping, but unless you understand the intent of that and what that control is talking about, that is something which is very, very important. And to answer your question, yes, we have a particular tool that we do, which we use for our customers as well, where we bring all of this particular piece into one forum, so that to basically meet that compliance fatigue, because we have customers coming and saying, hey, you know what, we don't want to keep doing these evidences time and again for multiple standards. So this is what we do. And yes, we are moving towards that particular direction. And Darshan, there's another important question. I think this is something which is very important, where somebody is asking us about the UPI. Because we come across many payment wallet service providers where UPI integration, access to our bank accounts, etc. They're asking how safe are they, and how safe is the customer data? It's difficult to trace who is leaking out our data. So, what are your thoughts about this?
So, I mean, I was a volunteer for UPI, but for the UPI security. But of course, the security framework is managed by NPCI, and they're the best to comment on it. But my 2 cents is, see, any technology at the end of the day has a pros and cons to it. And we need to address the cons of it. And I think by and large, they have done, I know UPI has done a fantastic job in terms of the design of the security. That's the kind of volunteering work that I did at the UPI. I don't want to, say the UPI is better than other security or, is lower than other security, but I think each one has its own facets and it needs to get addressed. So from my standpoint, what I see is, so our philosophy especially since we are in this side of the house, our job is to make sure that we take away a lot of liability away from the end consumer. And I speak a little differently from how the current payment providers are talking about it, especially the UPI providers. This one is, it's not about putting the liability on the end consumer. We need to take away. And so our design should be in such a way that we have adequate checks. So the end customer has a lot of trust, and that's how we need to design. So it's up to us as payment security or payment professionals or whatever we call ourselves to take away that burden from a business standpoint and accommodate that piece, which includes extra level of authentication or whatever it is. Because I think, and I think the regulatory framework is going in that direction, which is the regulators are insisting that the end customer is kind of devolved around it. In fact, I was in the last week. I was in an event with in a forum. I was one of the panelists along with SP of Bangalore cybercrime. And one of the key things that he was talking about is precisely this: is how do you safeguard end users today? The truth be told is that they are being because of the instant. The real-time settlement, like the way you just presented, and rightfully so, there's a lot of benefits of that, but it also has a disadvantage because you can't trace you can't reverse bulk of those transactions. And today you have mules who kind of provide that additional layer of of difficulty before you kind of find out who's the ultimate recipient and get the money back. And sometimes it is done international, so the money is actually gone out of the system. So it adds complexity. But as far as short answer, I think UPI has a lot of security checks and balances in place, and it's a beautiful technology. But yes, we need to do a lot more. If the question is whether we need to do a lot more as a community, absolutely yes.
Great, fantastic. Yeah. So just to add on to that as well, Dharshan, the reason why I picked up this particular question is because we were a part of BharatPay, right? That was the first thing which came into the picture, and we in fact did the security assessment around that, and we were first of a kind. So this is really good. So what I would like to say is also the regulators are moving in the right direction, because I don't know how many of them are aware about the DPSE circular which came out, which is basically around the digital payment security controls, which was very, very important, in terms of implementing security holistically into this particular platform, right? So to answer that particular question, yes, there is risk associated, but we're in the right direction, but a lot to do is what I would basically say. So the next question is, Pravin, I think this question is apt because you are already certified, and the question is, how do you respond to threats after certification? So off to you.
So easy answer. Security is not a one-stop solution. Certification only ensure your basic or fundamental building blocks are there. Good practices are there, but this is very evolving space and very fast changing space. You have to keep monitoring your threat vectors. You have to keep monitoring your threat surface, and also monitor the new vulnerabilities what are there in market. So it is a continuous process, but yes, how it helps, right? It helps in two ways. First is that yes, basics are there, right? So your customers or your potential customer will can rely that this particular company have invested in the security control posturing. Second is that from there, that adding the new layer of control or additional layer of control is always easy, right? If you have the awareness, if you have the culture, you have the basic tools, then adding one more tools or adding one more controls is always easier. In that way, it helps. But yes, it's not the solution that once you have the certification, go and sit and relax. No, it is not. Our CISO life is 24/7, 365 days till you are CISO. So this is the answer.
Absolutely. I think bang on, Pravin, because, like we have also mentioned rightly that being forensic investigators, we've seen organizations who are actually PCI DSS compliant and certified getting compromised as well, because they don't maintain this particular compliance over a period of time, right? So that is something which is very important. And what I would also recommend is, we do not just look into the compliance, but if you go to the security aspect of it, then compliance comes as a byproduct, I think. So that is my take as well. So we good. I think in the interest of time as well, it's already 4 o'clock. So I mean, it was great. I think this was a good session, and thanks to everybody for taking your time out and joining and being a part of this particular session. There are a lot of questions, just to tell Darshan and Pravin, we've got a lot of questions which are unanswered. But yes, in the interest of time, we'll take this offline and we'll respond to each of these particular, folks who come up with these particular questions. And also, I think we've also shared our top 5 learnings, which is the forensic investigations, which was a recent report, which was basically released by us. And we can also look into that particular piece. That's pretty much. You can feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to assist you. Thank you.
Prajwal, you have been great host. Thank you. Thank you, Darshan. It's always a pleasure, talking and interacting with you. Thank you. I really enjoyed that. And hopefully we'll be able to reply all those queries which have not been answered in this session.
Sure. Yep. Thanks, Pravin. Thanks, Prajwal. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.